The morning Blake Moreland called me a weed began with a splash of hot coffee down my sleeve. I had just stepped into the elevator when he spun around too quickly, his cup tilting, the liquid streaking across the white fabric of my shirt. The heat stung, but his expression stung more. "If you watched where you were going, Maren, this would not happen," he said, brushing past me as if I were nothing more than a misplaced box. "I walked straight in," I answered quietly. He did not bother responding. The elevator doors opened, and he strode out as if the building itself owed him space. I tried to shake it off. It was only 8 in the morning, and I had a dozen routing reports waiting on my desk. But an hour later, in the parking lot, he swung his car door open just as I passed. The edge clipped my side mirror hard enough to make it snap backward. He stared at the damage, then at me. "You really need to be more aware," he said, the same cool irritation in his voice. "You take up more space than you should." It was the second time he blamed me for something he caused. Small things, but the kind that carried intention. I kept my breath steady, but my chest tightened in a way I could not ignore. By the afternoon, he called an unscheduled meeting. No agenda, no context. Just a calendar notification instructing me to be in conference room 3 at 3 o'clock. I walked in to find Blake already standing, hands clasped in front of him, eyes sharp. A few team members sat along the wall, uncertain why they were there. "You know," Blake began, "some people help a department grow. Others—" His gaze landed on me, cold and deliberate. "Others are like weeds. They spread, they choke progress, and they need to be pulled out." The room fell still. "Leave immediately. You're fired." For a moment, I simply breathed. Then I felt something settle inside me, steady, unshaken. "I'm afraid I can't," I said. A slow, measured voice sounded behind me. "She's right." Rowan Hale, the chief executive officer, stepped forward. Blake's confidence collapsed in an instant. 3 months earlier, I should have seen the first cracks forming. 3 months earlier, I was just Maren Lyle, 36, senior data operations analyst, the kind of person most people only emailed when something went wrong. Back then, Halcyon's routing compliance engine was my entire world automation rules, shipment audits, exception alerts, and the thousands of tiny decisions the system made every hour. I spoke to it more than I spoke to people. It was easier that way. Most coworkers assumed Blake Moreland oversaw the engine. He encouraged the misunderstanding whenever a report ran flawlessly or a client praised the turnaround time. He stepped in with a smile and said, "Glad our team could deliver." He never looked at me when he said it. Not once. One morning, I left a printed analysis on his desk, an alert pattern showing a rising delay in weekend shipments. He skimmed 2 lines and pushed it aside. "I will handle the presentation," he said. "You focus on the back-end work. That is where you shine." I recognized the tone. He was carving out the spotlight before the meeting even started. In the hallway later, I heard our HR partner praising him. "Your department is the calmest part of this building. Blake, whatever you're doing, keep it up." He laughed, warm and confident, and I walked past unnoticed, holding the actual code that kept his department alive. Outside of Halcyon, life felt tighter. My father's medical bills in Bend were piling higher each month, and I checked my bank account more often than I checked the weather. I told him I was fine. He never asked how hard the job really was. That afternoon, as I reviewed shipment logs, a message popped up from the finance vice president, Lila Hart. "Hey, Maren," she wrote. "Quick question. Did you intend to submit 2 versions of the Q2 routing report? The totals don't match Blake's presentation packet." My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. I had submitted 1 version. Only 1. Once Lila's message arrived, I began looking at the numbers with a different kind of attention. It did not take long to notice the seams pulling apart. By Wednesday morning, 2 key performance indicators had shifted in a way that made no statistical sense. A spike in shipment delays had been flattened into a gentle curve. A cluster of customer complaints vanished from the shared tracker without explanation. I stared at the empty rows, feeling the familiar tightness behind my ribs. When I brought the discrepancy to Blake, he didn't bother hiding his irritation. "You worry too much, Maren," he said, waving a hand over the spreadsheet I'd printed. "Executives do not want noise. They want clean lines, smooth trends. They want accuracy," I replied. These numbers were altered. His jaw tightened. Then make them look right. Adjust the delay analytics. Bring the totals in line with last quarter. That would be misleading. Blake leaned closer. "It would be helpful. You do want to be helpful, don't you?" For the first time, I saw the edge beneath his polished surface. I folded the spreadsheet and walked out without another word. Later that night, still unsettled, I logged into the server to review the report history. A timestamp caught my eye: 2:14 in the morning, an edit made under my credentials. I hadn't been awake at that hour. I pulled up the detailed log, and the truth hit hard. Blake had used my access token. If audit reviewed that version, the blame would fall on me. My hands trembled as I saved copies of the logs into a personal legal safe archive. I labeled everything carefully. Every file, every timestamp. The rot was deeper than I'd realized, and Blake had already begun carving out the perfect scapegoat. 2 days after finding the altered timestamp, another message appeared in my inbox, this time from a mid-level auditor named Karina Walton. "Hi, Maren," she wrote. "Quick clarification. Did you really mean to submit 2 versions of the same routing integrity report? One of them looks clean. The other is different." I typed back slowly. "I only submitted 1 version. Can you forward me both? Karina sent them within minutes." My report was intact. The second version, the one Blake had presented, was warped, smoothed, and stripped of every red flag. I saved the files into my archive folder, naming them carefully. My hands did not shake this time. Later that afternoon, I stood with 2 engineers reviewing a routing anomaly that had triggered an auto stop. I was explaining the logic path when a voice behind us said, "Hold on. Show me that sequence again." I turned to find Rowan Hale watching the screen. The chief executive officer rarely spent time on our floor. He studied the anomaly graph with a steady, almost measured focus, then met my eyes for a brief moment before nodding and walking on. Neither engineer said anything after he left. They did not need to. Near 5 o'clock, Blake stepped into my office doorway. "You are becoming a problem," he said quietly. "Do not make me clean this department." I closed my laptop. I am doing my job. That is not what I am talking about. We held each other's stare until he stepped back, expression tight. That night, I documented everything: Karina's email, both report versions, the modified logs, the Slack messages Blake deleted from shared channels. Each file went into my archive with a new label. The next morning, in the parking lot, Blake's car door swung open just as I walked by. It hit my side mirror, snapping it back. He didn't apologize. "Not essential," he muttered. Neither was the accident, but the intention was unmistakable. By the next week, shipment delays spiked hard enough that even the client inbox turned sharp. Blake began forwarding every angry message directly to me, only to me, each one marked urgent. "Handle this," he wrote again and again. When I checked the shared inbox to see if anyone else had responded, there was nothing. Every forwarded complaint he sent me had been deleted from the group thread. I stared at the empty list, the cursor blinking like a warning. Around 10 that morning, an alert from my routing engine lit up my screen. Rule override detected. A rule I had written myself, one that prevented misrouted freight during high-volume hours, had been forcefully disabled. I whispered aloud. "Who touched this?" I pulled up the access logs. There it was, stamped clearly. The override originated from Blake's admin-level account at 3:28 in the morning. I saved the entire trail override signature, timestamp, user ID into a new folder inside my archive. Another incident file. Another quiet piece of truth. Near noon. Callie from reporting brushed past my desk and lowered her voice. I heard Blake talking to HR. She said, "He kept saying he is streamlining the team before the end of the quarter. He mentioned your name." I felt the words settle into my chest like weight. Did he say why? No. Just, be careful. I nodded once. She hurried away. By mid-afternoon, I received a calendar alert for a cross-department review meeting, except my name wasn't on the attendee list. I tried to open the deck they were using, but the permissions were locked. These were my metrics, my engine, my rules. Still, Blake had blocked my access. I walked to his doorway. Why am I not included in the review? He didn't look up. Because you're not needed. I will speak for the team. For my work. I said. For the department, he corrected, voice clipped. Now go back to your desk. The door clicked shut behind me. The meeting in conference room 3 was already underway when I stepped inside. Blake stood near the screen, laser pointer in hand, his voice smooth as he walked the group through a set of flawless-looking charts. The numbers glowed clean, almost too clean. A few department leads sat against the wall. Karina from audit was there too, her arms crossed. At the far end of the table, Rowan Hale watched Blake with a stillness that made the air heavier. Blake paused when he noticed me. "You are not on the attendee list." "Maren." "I know," I said quietly, taking a seat near the door. He cleared his throat and clicked to the next slide. As you can see, trend stability remains strong. Shipment delays are minimal, and client satisfaction, that is impossible. Karina cut in. The client queue has been overflowing all week. Blake smiled, strained. Temporary noise. I chose to filter out anomalies to give leadership a clearer perspective. Rowan's gaze sharpened, filtered how Blake stumbled only for a second. Standard adjustments. I can walk you through them later. I felt his eyes flick toward me. His voice hardened. Some team members resist change. Some even create friction that harms productivity. I knew what was coming before he said it. You're like a weed, Maren, spreading problems. We're pulling you out. You're fired. Leave the room. A few heads turned sharply. Someone exhaled. Blake waited for me to stand, confident the moment belonged to him. But 3 months of altered logs, deleted complaints, false reports, and stolen credentials sat in my memory like anchors. I stayed seated. "I'm afraid I can't," I said. Blake's jaw clenched. "Excuse me." I felt a presence behind me steady. Composed. "She's right," Rowan said. The room went silent. Blake's face drained of color, and for the first time, he had nothing to say. Rowan stepped farther into the room, the door closing behind him with a soft click. "Maren," he said, "show us what you have." Blake moved first. "Rowan, that is unnecessary. She is confused. I can explain every sit down," Rowan said. The command was quiet, but the authority in it left no room for argument. Blake's mouth snapped shut as he lowered himself into the nearest chair. I opened my laptop. "Karina, you sent me 2 versions of the same routing integrity report last week. This is the one I submitted." I tapped the first file. "And this is the altered version Blake used in his presentation." Karina's eyes widened. "These numbers aren't even close." I continued. "Here are the login logs. An edit was made under my credentials at 2:14 in the morning. I was not online at that time." I slid the screen toward Rowan. The token used belonged to Blake. Blake leaned forward. "That is taken out of context." Rowan raised a hand. "Not another word." I pulled up the next set of files. Shipment complaints removed from the shared tracker. Each deletion was executed from Blake's admin account. Then I opened the engine diagnostics. And here an unauthorized override of a routing rule I created. It was triggered at 3:28 in the morning, Someone at the table whispered, "This is sabotage." Rowan nodded to the legal counsel at his left. She scanned the documents, her expression darkening. "This is potential regulatory exposure, breach of client contract, manipulation of operational reports." I brought up one final file. There were also forced error injections tied to my credentials. It should have their own logs. Rowan signaled to the IT lead at the back. He opened his tablet, eyes flicking rapidly. "Confirmed," he said. Blake labeled them as Maren's performance failures. A long beat passed. Rowan turned back to Blake, his voice colder than I had ever heard. "I flagged your department months ago. The numbers never matched what I saw internally." Blake's breath hitched, and just like that, the unraveling began. HR moved faster than I expected. Within an hour of the meeting ending, 2 representatives arrived on our floor with clipped voices and firm expressions. "Blake Moreland," one of them said from his doorway, "you are being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Gather your personal items only." Blake stared at them, stunned. "You cannot be serious. This is a misunderstanding." Rowan stepped in behind them. "It was serious the moment you falsified operational data." Blake's eyes darted toward me before he finally stood. He tried to speak twice, but no words came out. HR escorted him down the hall, his footsteps uneven, the door shutting behind them like a final seal. As soon as he disappeared, the room loosened. Callie from reporting stepped over, lowering her voice. "I did not want to get involved earlier, but Blake deleted 3 of my client emails last month and told me to stay in my lane." I kept copies. Karina nodded. "He tried to pressure me into approving a trimmed set of audit numbers. I refused. He stopped inviting me to review sessions after that," another engineer added. "He told me to ignore a routing exception because it would make the department look messy. It caused a 2-day delay. One by one, the stories surfaced, each one sharper than the last. I listened, steady but exhausted, the weight of the past months settling in my shoulders. Then a message pinged on the shared client line. Rowan's assistant forwarded it to me, and legal. A major client had submitted documented proof that Blake falsified their delivery audit. Dates, signatures, altered metrics all neatly attached. Legal murmured, "That alone is grounds for termination for cause." I stepped back from my screen and finally exhaled, not with triumph, just release. A moment later, Rowan appeared beside my desk. "Maren," he said softly, "walk with me." We stepped into a quiet conference room. He closed the door. "I have been watching your work for months, and now I understand exactly who keeps this place standing." He paused, studying my face. "I want to discuss what comes next for you here." I folded my hands, steady, listening. Rowan sat across from me in the quiet conference room, his hands folded, his expression clearer than I had ever seen it. "I want to offer you something," he said. "Not a consolation prize, a position that reflects what you actually do here." He paused. "Director of Operational Integrity. You would report directly to me." I blinked, the title landing slowly. "That is a significant change. It is the right one," he replied. "This company needs someone who understands the systems beneath the numbers and refuses to bend them." I let the words settle, then shook my head lightly. "If I accept, it comes with non-negotiables." He lifted an eyebrow. "Tell me." "Mandatory transparency workflows," I began. "No more hidden edits or buried complaints. Every data manipulation must be logged and visible." "Done," Rowan said without hesitation. "An ethics audit loop." I continued. "Independent oversight with the authority to freeze reporting if anything looks off." He nodded. "Also done. And protected reporting channels. What happened with Blake cannot happen to anyone else. If a junior analyst raises a concern, they cannot be punished for it. That is essential." He agreed. I took a breath. "One more thing. We need a training program for new analysts. Real training. Not the quick onboarding Blake pushed. They should understand data archaeology, how to trace the origins and logic behind every number. Rowan leaned back, a small smile forming. You are asking to rebuild the foundation. I am asking to make sure it does not rot again. Then you have everything you just listed, he said. All of it. The room felt different then, lighter, grounded. He extended his hand. Welcome to the leadership table. Maren. I accepted the offer with a steady shake. The decision felt right, solid. The foundation beneath me finally held. The final HR legal meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning. Blake arrived 5 minutes early, a stiff confidence in his posture, as if he expected nothing more than a reprimand and a quiet, face-saving transfer. He sat across from me without acknowledgement, drumming his fingers on the table. The head of legal, Marisol Chen, opened a folder thick with documents. Blake Moreland. We are here to review the findings of the formal investigation. Blake leaned back. Good. I am ready to correct whatever misunderstandings have been circulating. Marisol did not look up. The investigation revealed intentional data falsification. Blake shifted. That was a presentation choice. Executives prefer? It was not a choice. She cut in. It was deception. HR Director Thomas Reeves spoke next. We also confirmed retaliatory conduct. Multiple employees provided documented statements. Blake scoffed. People exaggerate when they feel threatened. Marisol continued calmly. A major client submitted proof you altered their delivery audit. That is contract breach. His fingers stopped moving. And, she added, sliding a final page forward, logs show misuse of secured credentials. You accessed systems under Maren Lyle's token. That is a violation of both internal policy and state regulation. For the first time, Blake's voice faltered. I was correcting her mistakes. Thomas looked directly at him. The logs show you injected false errors and deleted complaint records. Those actions were traced only to your account. Rowan entered then, silent, standing behind Marisol. Blake saw him and straightened, but Rowan's expression remained unreadable. Marisol capped her pen. Effective immediately. You are terminated for cause. All severance is revoked. And due to the nature of the violations, the report will be referred to the State Oversight Board for professional review. Blake stared at the table, breath shallow. No one spoke. When the meeting adjourned, I stood. Blake avoided my eyes as he gathered his things, shoulders bent under a weight he had built for himself. I did not speak. There was nothing left to say. Outside, the Portland air was cold, sharp enough to clear the last traces of the room from my lungs. I stepped into it with steady footing, not uprooted, not a weed, something deeper, something built to hold an entire system upright.